Okay, back by popular demand. I know some people have been asking because we said we would do a video with my friend James Ruberti from Ruberti Construction here on Cape Cod. A video about bidding jobs and kind of like the process and how we go about it. I can't tell you any of my numbers because some of my competitors watch my YouTube channel, and we live in a highly saturated area, and competition's healthy and everything, but I'm not gonna help them.
Yeah.
But the other reason is because I think from talking to people since I've started doing YouTube, all of the numbers don't matter all of my numbers won't matter to somebody that lives in a different part of the country and they're paying different.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're going to go through.
Well, even between us, I think like what we've talked about off air is you need to know when you're doing estimating, the most important thing to know is you need to know your numbers, your company's numbers. Doesn't matter what your neighbor's doing, the guy down the street, the guy in the county over. It's what works for you is the most important part.
So I'm thinking what we'll do is we'll just explain the process. Now, James, his background is all large work like airports, the company he was...
Federal, municipal, state work.
So what we're going to do is, because most of the guys that would be interested in that type of work, they already know how to do that.
Correct.
So what we're going to do is we're going to lean more towards homeowner residential.
Mm-hmm.
And
which is what I'm doing now anyways.
Yeah.
Now that I'm on my own.
And since I'm not drinking coffee and, whatever.
Yeah.
Take it away.
All right, guys. So I'm James, Ruberti Construction. Like Steve said, I have been a project estimator for a couple large scale companies in my area, bidding and running jobs anywhere from $200,000 to up to $20 million. So I have a lot of experience with estimating numbers, material pricing, equipment and labor pricing in our area. This year I have gone on my own. I'm doing residential site work, septic systems, most of the stuff that I think you guys watching are doing. So it was highly requested of how Steve and I kind of approach bidding a job. I want to say I like to break it into 5 categories. I would say the sales or a sales call. The customer is going to reach out to you or a point of contact, a builder. Then there's the takeoff or the client meeting. You're going there, you're looking at the job, you're talking to the client, basically getting all the information you need to bid the project. Then there is the vendor for material pricing and subcontractor pricing, depending on the job that you're doing. Then you're going to move into the estimate itself, which is what's the job going to cost you, the overhead of your company, which can be employees, insurance, equipment payments, basically, your cost. And then it comes down to what you're looking to make as far as a profit, whether it's a percentage, a certain amount of money per day, it can vary. And then finally, once that estimate is submitted, we'll talk a little bit about contracts, what we kind of go into creating our contracts, as far as exclusions, things to kind of cover yourself in case of unforeseen circumstances on the job, as well as deposits, payment schedule, all that good stuff. And I think if there's anything that we don't cover today, if you guys have individual questions, we'll talk about it at the end, but you can reach out to Steve and I, and we might make a more detailed video once we understand kind of what exactly you guys are specifically looking for. This is going to kind of be general, and like we said, we're probably not going to get too specific into the numbers because it varies area to area, but at least
I don't know.
At least as far as breakdowns and stuff, this should be able to help you guys out a little bit.
Yeah, I would say to start off, the way it works for me is my process is I'll go meet with a customer, whether I get them from, however you get them, that's marketing. Yeah. That's a whole nother
whole different video.
Whole different video is marketing. But what I'll do is I'll establish contact with them, whether it's you get an email or through Facebook or whatever.
A website inquiry, whatever it may be.
Anything, I will contact them as soon as I can, right away. That makes a huge difference.
Absolutely.
Especially in our area where, like I said, there's like 7 contractors on my road alone.
Yeah, very saturated. So it's almost like a first come, first serve type thing.
Yep. So you need to be the first. You need to be the first person on their mind. You need to be the first guy in the door.
Yep.
Don't dilly dally, because also the way that you treat an estimate is the way that they feel you're going to treat them throughout the job.
Absolutely.
So if your communication is bad from the beginning, they're going to go, I don't want to deal with this guy because his communication is terrible.
Yep. First impressions are everything. Like, when you show up to that meeting, you're building you're building your brand. You're selling yourself, not just your work, if that makes sense. So obviously try to dress as professional and clean as you can. I mean, we're all in the construction industry,
I once got a job because a guy showed up in a 2-door Mercedes Benz wearing a tank top covered in gold chains and rings and wearing loafers and a little convertible, little fancy little car. And I showed up in a pickup truck, not a total beater. It was a decent pickup truck. And the guy at the job said, you got the job. I said, I didn't even give you my numbers. He says, well, it's you and him bidding on it. He says, and I'm not paying for that little car, and this guy's not. And I know that's stereotyping, but that's just the way the world works, okay?
No, it's that first impression, what they're seeing, how you're, we're not saying you need to show up with a brand new $80,000 truck.
You need to show up, I think, with an in-betweener.
Yeah.
That's not, you don't want to show up with something that they're going to say, look at this guy doesn't even take care of his own vehicle. It's falling apart. And you don't want to show up in a vehicle that somebody says, oh my God, look at this guy's going to be expensive as hell. Look at, he's wearing all those gold chains and necklaces.
No, exactly.
Because the truth of it is, whether anyone wants to admit it or not, when you first go for a job, the customer's profiling you. They're sizing you up.
Yep.
So I found you want to be like an in-between, you want an in-betweener, don't. You can have the toys and everything if you're successful. Don't take your toys to an estimate.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, and I think it could be the same way as like a tire. Like, you don't want to show up with necessarily like a suit and like a collared shirt all the time, but you also don't want to be with ripped, baggy, crazy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like that happy medium.
You want it in between.
Yeah.
You can show up wearing a nice collared shirt.
Yeah. A polo or whatever.
Or just me personally, a lot of the jobs that I get, I can show up looking like a bum because they're word of mouth.
Yeah. Okay. I'm the same way. Most of my stuff is for builders who are in the industry and they know that I'm coming from work or,
Yeah.
It's
so
not...
once you establish that relationship with people, but new customers, there's one now. New customers, I actually know that guy. I'll call him back. Always answer your customers.
Yep.
Your new customers.
That's huge.
He's not. So,
basically what we're getting at is first impression is
everything.
Is key. Yeah.
You don't want to be too far one way, too far the other way. Now, after you establish
the first point of contact
in the first meeting.
Yep.
You want to listen to what they want.
Yep. You want to make sure let them, ask questions definitely, but let them kind of own the conversation at first. Let them get out everything in their minds, kind of what they're looking for as far as scope of work. Definitely, like we've talked about this, maybe even if they have a budget or an anticipated timeline when they're looking to get the work done. So that's, I think, is important too, and should be an early conversation starter before you get, you don't want to waste your time on something that, is going to take way more than they're willing to spend, or if there's going to be no way that you can meet the deadline. Estimating takes time, which is taking away from other jobs. So it's
the other thing too is if you have an idea in your head of what it's going to cost to do this job, and I always ask people, did you have a budget in mind? Because what will happen sometimes you'll get surprised. Yep. So let's just say it was like, $2,000 is what you're thinking. I charge somebody $2,000 to do this. And you say, did you have a budget in mind? And they're like, nah, I don't want to go over 10. And you're like, oh, all right. Yeah. Now you know that there's some money. You don't do 999.
Yeah, you're not trying to screw them, but but at the same time, like that, they understand that it's going to be a significant amount of money, which is good for you. They're not going to be blindsided by your.
So now you know, number one, you're not where you need to be. Yeah. Okay. You're not where you need to be. You do know that you may be able to throw a little extra in
Mm-hmm.
because now you know that you have a good budget to work with for what that job
we call it a little fluff. Throw a little fluff in there.
So,
but along those lines, I just don't want to skip over it because I know we talk about it all the time. Never, if you learn one thing from this, never give a number off the cuff while you're standing with them. Take the time to either go back in your truck and think it over for a few minutes, or even better, go back to the office, like get a real grasp on everything and break it down. Because like you said, you could go out and you could shout that number out and be like 2,000. And they're like, oh, I thought it was going to be 10. Yeah. You're kind of shooting yourself in the foot a little bit. And now the whole job, you're going to be thinking like, oh, like this is going to be costing me money. Like I could have got more money.
You're going to be psychologically, you're going to be trying to do a rush job.
Yeah.
And you're going to be trying to find a way to cut corners. And
very popular guy today, Steve.
I don't know spam, so whoever spam risk is. So, yeah, you definitely don't want to, like what I do is, so like I'll meet them, I'll talk with them.
And a lot of these customers, will pressure you to try to get something right off the bat.
All
like,
the time.
Oh, I don't, they'll say, I don't need, I don't need specifics. I just need a budget. But even if you give them a budget, if that is not close to once you go back and think, they're going to be like, but you told me it was going to be.
They're going to be mad at you.
Yeah.
They're going to think that you lied to them.
Yep. And you're going to immediately lose that customer.
And the other thing is, do not ever give a price over the phone. You always have to go and check out the job.
Yeah.
You always have to look at the job, check for truck accessibility, overhead wires. Yeah. A lot of homeowners, you may have to go to your town and pull an as-built card for the septic because a lot of homeowners don't know where the septic is, and you can't have a delivery truck. I've seen a dump truck in a septic tank, a 10-wheeler. Because they just took the homeowner's word. It's not their line of work. And some homeowners and some property owners have never even seen a septic tank. They don't. I
think you have to go to the site. Steve and I today, I was pricing a septic, and I have the engineered plans. Looked it up on Google Earth, saw all this stuff. I was like, looks pretty straightforward. But we took the time to go out there. It was about 25 minutes, 30 minutes out of our way, but took the time to go out there and take a look. And right when we were there, we're like, wow, this site is super tight. You're not going to be able to store any material. I'm going to barely be able to get my size excavator. I might be renting a machine. So yeah, it's definitely 100% go out, definitely meet in person with the customer for sure.
And check out, which, like you said, which machine you're going to need for that job site. Because if you have to rent a machine, now you have to factor that in if you have the wrong size machine.
Yep.
And the other thing too is, I know it sounds crazy, but for me coming from a low bed background, the other thing you also have to look at is how am I getting my trucks in here? Do they live on? I once looked at a job where I couldn't get trucks in there. I had to go like all the way around because it was a wooden bridge. So like on Google Earth or whatever.
Yeah, you never find that.
It's not going to show you that. So all that comes into factor.
Absolutely.
So I think once you meet with the person, you find out. Here's another thing too. Unless you have somebody like James or somebody that's on the same page as you, don't bring your buddies or people who are not in that line of work to an estimate. I once brought a friend of mine to an estimate with me, and he talked over the person every time they tried to say something.
Yeah.
He would cut them off and go, oh yeah, we could probably do this. We could do that. That's not good because they're paying for it. They don't care what my buddies.
Yeah. No, I even say like, even if you need a subcontractor on the job, I wouldn't recommend bringing them to the job. Like you can bring them after you meet with the client. Like if you're taking on the job and doing it, you're the quote unquote general contractor. I've found it sometimes, especially working for larger companies, that sometimes the subcontractor will overshadow your conversation, like you're saying, and focus more on what they're doing when you're trying to figure out what you're doing as a whole. So, and that's just can be just people's personalities, not that they're doing it malicious. So yeah, I would recommend, like, you want to go there. Our instance today, like we didn't even actually meet, the customer wasn't there. We're kind of just had a couple hours just free this morning, so we went to look at it. But like that's fine. But I would solely bring you, or if there's a person, maybe one of your head guys for your company or an employee. I mean, somebody in the game. Yeah. Somebody. It's fine, but
somebody that knows when to speak, when not to speak.
Yeah. but preferably you want it to be just you and the customer on that first initial call. Anyways, bring in all the people after, once you know the scope, let the homeowner know, hey, I'm going to have my sub stop by, we're going to walk it, whatever. But that first official meeting really should just be you and the client or potential client.
And then what I usually do is after that's been done and I leave and I tell them, I will get you a price. If you tell them you're going to get them a price by Monday, let me take the weekend and let me crunch the numbers. Let me call my vendors, make sure nothing went up because, nowadays everything is going up daily.
Yeah, daily, yeah.
So I will then say, let me check with everybody. Let me crunch the numbers and I'll get back to you on Tuesday. Make sure you get back to them on Tuesday.
You want to, and I think I'm kind of a little OCD with it, but I try to get my estimates done literally almost out that day because we talk about it, and you can't do that with every job. Is some vendors take longer to get back and whatnot, depending on what you're doing, subcontractors, etc. But like we talked about at the beginning, you want to be the first and only thing on their mind. They're having other people come in and look at that job. So the first person to get that estimate in too is going to make a big impression. But It goes back to your main point where communication through the whole process is key. If it's going to take a few days, it's going to take a few days, but you want to let that customer know. Yep. If you know that it's going to be 3 weeks till you can realistically get to that job and start working on it, don't tell them that you'll be there in 2 weeks. You want to be upfront, honest, and it goes a long way.
I found if it's going to be a while and I tell them upfront, they're okay with waiting.
Yeah.
But I've always been upfront, honest. But I know I've heard some stories of guys saying like, "Oh, I told this person I'd be there, and now they're mad at me, and now they're gonna go with this other guy." And it's like, well, what did you expect? You lied to them.
Yeah.
You lied.
Yeah.
No one wants to. I don't like being lied to.
No, and that's your first step on the project. Like, these people are trying to trust you through their whole project. I mean, even if it's a small little thing, but still, they're paying you money, which is significant to them.
Yep.
So it's important.
A lot of them have saved up to do stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Average people living paycheck to paycheck.
Yep.
So
after that initial sales call, we'll move into what I like to call the takeoff. So after you have this conversation with the client, and Steve and I have talked about this, I think it's best for you to go to the client and be like, hey, if you don't mind, I'd like to take some couple measurements, kind of get a grasp of the materials and stuff I need. And the homeowner will kind of take the hint that it's time for them to take a step back, because the last thing you want to do is be measuring, pulling tapes, using a wheel or whatever, digging a test pit, whatever, while the homeowner's there kind of talking in your ear. It's going to be kind of distracting. You want to be as accurate as you can on the measurements and the takeoffs. So kind of saying subtle things like that helps. But basically, depending on your scope of work, you want to try to get a square footage of the area, calculate your yardages or tonnages of the materials you need to bring in. Like Steve said, take a look at the site access. That's huge, because obviously time is money. So having to maneuver like off the not quickest route to get the project done adds time, and it's going to obviously impact your numbers. So getting all those material takeoffs, and then there's tools that can help you too. Steve mentioned the septic as-built. Most towns, especially in our area, you can pull up the property online. It's free of charge, and you can get an as-built. It'll tell you where the septic is, all the piping. A lot of times it'll tell you existing utilities underground. And most importantly, it will give you soil conditions and depth of soil. So if you're doing a drainage project and you need to get into some permeable material or something, it'll give you a rough estimate, which can help you a lot as well. Yeah. So
and somebody's already done that work.
Exactly.
It's already on file with the town.
Yeah.
So what I'll do is, after I take all that and I tell them, I'll have my price to you by, let's say, Tuesday, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then I get an okay back from them. Okay, it sounds good. I want to go with it. What I tell them in the first meeting is, if you choose to go with us, the way it works for us, just to give you a heads up, because this might determine whether they decide to use you or not. Also, is the way that we do it is we do sign contracts with everybody, and we do 50% deposit upfront and 50%
after completion.
After date of completion.
Yeah.
So that's not like whenever you feel like it.
Yeah.
After, because now we're talking about, money. So you gotta, now is where you have to set your terms.
Mm-hmm.
So they have to understand that the day that I'm done, you have to give me a check.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I'll say, oh,
Yeah.
like tomorrow morning. Yeah, I'll swing by tomorrow or something.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? But
no, and that can vary people to people. Obviously the bigger jobs and stuff like that,
like
a lot of the times it's
a third.
Yeah, but you're also, a lot of times it's like 30 days they have to pay, on some of the bigger commercial site works and stuff, you're not. So it depends what you're doing, but for the smaller type stuff,
residential,
like, that's
because I know a large company like site development, they pay once a month, like you said. So you submit all your stuff, and in once a month they cut you a check or whatever. Mm-hmm. But for like the younger guys that are like starting off, you're probably gonna want to do,
you're gonna need that. Like,
you're gonna need that working
perfect
capital.
instance is me. Is like a lot of those deposits are gonna carry a lot of the job for you when you're first going, when you don't have the bankroll right away.
Yeah, we'll talk about that after.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then what I'll do is after you
go back to your office and you're working on the estimate, obviously the first thing you want to do is and I think rule of thumb, a lot of people don't do this, and I don't know why, but we mentioned prices. As you guys know, the economy are changing every day. So even if the guy down the street is selling loam or soil for $20 a yard, and you need 200 yards for this project, call him. You never know. He might be able to cut you a break on the price. It might have went up. So I always say, get your vendor and material pricing out, your subcontractor pricing out.
The other thing too is,
because that's what's going to take a while to get back.
The other thing too is like on your contracts, you need to put like, this contract's only good for however many days you want.
Yeah.
So like if it's like 30 days, estimate.
Estimate, yeah.
Did you know I don't do written estimates anymore?
You just do them on the computer, you're saying?
I just tell people a number, and then if you want it for residential, I'll tell you a number. I'll explain to you in great detail verbally. Mm-hmm. But if you want me to do the job, then I will go through the time to have her sit down and do up your thing, because I'm not going to pay her for you to take it shopping. We used to do a lot of written estimates for everyone and like print them and give them to them. And then I'm blowing through printer ink, and ink cartridge was like $92 or whatever last time I bought one, and they're taking it shopping. Yeah. This past winter I've been on 2 different jobs right before the winter where the people were they were like, okay, yeah, that sounds great. Mm-hmm. And then they're like, oh, I need a written estimate. Oh, I need it written. The only reason, in my opinion, in the years that I've been doing written estimates, because it's since 2005. Yeah. Is when I had my first company. Yeah. The only reason ever people would ever ask me for a written estimate, like a homeowner, is because they're going to take it shopping. Yeah, I guess on that topic, things are a little different for me, because I will never do anything other than a written estimate, just for the fact because most of the work I'm doing is for builders. So, they need a written estimate with the scope of work, your exclusions, everything, because they're submitting it to bid the whole site. You're like a small port, I'm the excavating contractor, I'm building the whole site. So I can't just like text him a number and be like, hey, it's going to be this much. He wants something concrete in writing. He doesn't 100% have the job. Speaking of concrete, you mean you can't put it on loose leaf paper and just take a picture and text it to them? We know somebody that did that. Yeah. No, the other but I get what you're saying. Yeah, a lot of these written estimates, people are just shopping them around. It's unfortunate, but that's what I do. I definitely think there's an advantage to written estimates. As far as professional. That's what I do with homeowners. Yeah. But like I had a couple builders in the past that they have to submit that to the bank because they're getting construction loans. Well, that too, exactly. So like they have to, but the builders and everything that are whatever developers, whatever you want to call them. You pretty much know that, and you're okay with it. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. And it's just part of the game. Unfortunately, there was a property maintenance company that a long time ago when we were mowing lawns and we did anything else for them, they made us do that also. But like your regular, in my experience, your regular homeowner, when they ask for it in writing, I never hear from them again. Mm-hmm. Every time. Carrie says to me, why is it every time? Yeah, because they're just shopping. Carrie's my wife. She says, why is it every time the person that asks for a written estimate, homeowner, we never hear from them.
You never hear back.
Everybody else is like, yeah, that sounds good, whatever.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, okay, well, all right, I'll draw up the paperwork for you to sign it, and then I'll get a deposit check from you. And they go, okay, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
And if the reason why you ask for a deposit on every job is a couple different reasons, is because number one, I found the first thing of it is someone complains about giving you money up front.
It's going to be a struggle to get payment in the wrong.
You don't want anything to do with them. Run away. They're just a nightmare.
Yeah, I always say, and we joked about this the other day, when a person says, why do you need a deposit? You don't think I'm good for it. They're probably not good for it.
Yeah. I had a guy one time tell me that he was a retired developer.
Mm-hmm.
And I walked this whole job site with him. And then at the end, I was like, yeah, all right. And he goes, okay, sounds great. I'm like, all right, cool. I was like, what day are you going to be around? I'll bring you the paperwork and grab a deposit check from you. And we're walking side by side down the driveway. And he's like, yeah, no, I don't do deposits. I'm like, oh, all right, well, it was nice meeting you. And he goes, what do you mean? I go, but you don't do deposits and I don't do work for you.
Yeah. And
he was like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, you don't do deposits. He goes, you're going to cut some trees. He goes, I don't do deposits just on labor. Where's the materials? And I said, the guy's pay is material for me. The guy's payroll is material for me. The gas in the saw, the gas in the diesel in the chipper, the truck, chain bar oil, that's all materials for your job. Mm-hmm. That's all what it costs.
Yeah, and like we talked about, don't let guys bully you around about deposits. It's state law to be able to get a deposit for work. Like we talked about, most are a third, I think, like officially legally, but either way, you're allowed to get a deposit. It's not some...
So the other thing too is when you get a deposit, don't just get a deposit for the material.
Yeah, we can dive into this. We can dive into the story. Yeah, when you guys get a deposit for, I'll just throw a number. If you get a deposit for $50,000, Steve and I hope a lot of you know that you didn't just get $50,000. Don't go buy a new truck. That is meant to carry you through the job. So this story, I learned the hard way first couple of months in business. Contractor I was working for got a deposit and spent it before paying me for my deposit. I was a little naive. It was a friend of mine. I was really just kind
long-term friend.
Long-term friend. Yep. It was a friend of mine, and it got to the job. It was more of like a machine rental rate type job anyway, so it was kind of hard to put a exact number to it. But he ended up spending the deposit, thinking that the project was going to go all the way through. There was some stuff that happened. We won't get into specifics. He ended up getting fired from the job, and I still haven't been paid 4 months later for my portion of work. So deposits is all I can say.
Yep. And don't spend the deposit until the job is done. You spend the balance. The balance is your money.
Yeah. If you bid your jobs right, that first percentage of deposit you should get should be your materials, and to pay your guys is really what, and the balance is to cover your overhead and profit of your company. Yeah.
And you so you need to, like, a lot of people will say, like, okay, well, I just need a deposit just for this stone that I bought and just this. So it's like, no, you should get a little bit more, because if the person doesn't, if you have to take them to court, my way of looking at it is, if you have to take somebody to court, I like to get a deposit from someone that will actually cover a little bit of my labor, a little bit of my time, plus all materials and guys' pay, to where at least we made a little bit off the job.
Yeah. Yeah, so that it doesn't sting as bad. Like, yes, you're losing your profit and stuff, but at least most of the job was paid for, if not all of it.
Yeah, so at least you...
Always try to think worst case scenario. It's sad that you have to think like that, but at the end, it's your business. You want to be able to cover your ass.
And that's just how that's how the world works right now. That's how people are, okay? There are some people out there that are awesome, but you have to keep in mind there are some people out there that are out to screw you. And a lot of times the people that are out to screw you, they've done it multiple times to other people, and they're good at it. Yeah. So you have to be better. The other thing is, when you do your contracts, you also... Okay, so you've met with them.
Well, yeah, we can talk. I would say contracts the last part. We'll talk about, I guess, actually putting the estimate together itself. We talked a little bit about it. Obviously, you want to figure out your cost, material, what you're paying your guys or billing them out as laborers, your equipment. So there's that cost. Like, what is this job going to cost me to complete? Then there's what I consider overhead. Overhead is basically everything that cannot be attributed job specifically to that job. So it's if you have office staff paying for your office, it's your insurance for the year. It's if you own a building in a bay, renting space. It's I guess you could put some equipment. It's what you're paying yourself. Basically everything that's not specifically attributed to that one job. So the companies I've always worked for, the big ones, they'll take what that overhead number was for the year and divide it by their revenue and get a percentage number. So they know each job they need like a 14% or whatever overhead on this job. So you want to figure out that and add it to your cost of doing the job. So that overhead and that cost would be what your job cost is. And then it comes down to how much money you want to make. And that Steve and I can't tell you. I mean,
it depends on your situation.
Exactly.
It depends on your overhead. So like as far as like numbers, everybody always wants to know, what should I be charging? Here's the thing: where do you live? What's the demographic?
Mm-hmm.
We live in Massachusetts. It's expensive to live here.
Yeah.
I was just recently down in Florida. It's not as expensive to live there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so obviously my number after my overhead is going to be significantly higher than somebody who lives in North Carolina or wherever.
Yeah.
So, and people in California, their number is going to be like a lot higher than mine.
Yeah. I mean, I'll shut out numbers. I don't mind doing numbers. I try to do after my cost and overhead. I try to make at least 20% on the job is what I shoot for. I come from a background, like I said, from municipal work where you're shooting to get around 12 to 18% profit on those type of jobs. Residential and commercial, like I said, you should be trying to get like 18 to 20% minimum. I know a lot of guys are higher than that. And obviously you're going to have some jobs that didn't go exactly according to plan, but at least when you're bidding it, I would say try to shoot for like at least 18 to 20% profit, if not more, on top of your cost is what I've seen anyways, working for a few different companies.
Yeah, we started doing percentage profit. My son, everybody knows Bryson. He's like a walking computer. Mm-hmm. I'm just like, I want to make this much money.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of guys are like, I want to make $1,000 a day on top of expenses, which is fine. You can do that too. I mean, that's just a number in our area. I mean, I don't, like we said, it varies different to different, but and everybody has different circumstances. So.
Well, that's like the trucking. We were just talking about one trucking guy that he's charging $85 an hour.
Yep.
And somebody else that was charging, what was it? Like
$130 an hour.
$130
so that's vastly different.
Smaller truck. Mm-hmm. Because obviously, you know what I mean? So like my six-wheeler, I make a lot more than the guys with the triaxle.
Yep.
Because my numbers are, I don't have to run that thing if I don't want to. Mm-hmm. So if I'm gonna, it's gonna be worth it. So that's the other thing too is, when you do these jobs and you look at them, I would say from somebody who had a business, I started my first business and it did okay until 2008. Mm-hmm. I was doing it after work on the weekends. And then I got laid off in 2008, and then the numbers drastically changed. You could not people just didn't have the money. And if they did have it, they were scared of the economy, so they were going to hang on to it. I think we may see some of that again, judging by these crazy fuel prices. So what I would say to you is, if I could go back and talk to my younger self, I would say, don't take anything that comes through the door. Be picky with your jobs. Yeah. Don't be scared to make money. Like, we live in a capitalistic country. Mm-hmm. A lot of people, a lot of customers. I had a lady that was upset because of what I was going to charge her. I thought it was really fair. I think she was being ridiculous.
Yeah.
But she was like, "Why do you need to make that much money?" And I'm like, "Why do you need
bills to pay? I have a family. I have a house. You know, it's."
It wasn't even that much. It was like $1,200. I'll tell you.
It goes down to saying everybody's circumstances is different. Only you can, you know.
Well, my thing of it is like this. Here's the thing, right? She don't let her. She was trying to bully me into taking the job for cheaper. Well, here's the thing. I'm not in the position to where I'm desperate to take it. So if you're starting a business, you might not want. You might need to take everything you can get your hands on to get going. Like that's understandable, and there's nothing wrong with that.
But like you said, it gets to
Don't
a
get
point
in the
where
habit. Be aware of it, because
you don't want to go out there and bust your butt for 10, 12 hours a day and make no money. Who wants to do that?
well, why are you starting a business? You're
Yeah.
starting a business because you want to make more money than your boss is paying you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So don't be afraid, and don't be shy when it comes to charging, and don't be afraid to walk away.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let's say that you figured out your numbers and you say, I want to make this much money. I figured out this is my cost. And the customer comes back and says to you, well, that's not within my budget. Don't go back and cut your price in half.
No.
Because now you've established.
No, you've put the work in to make that original estimate. You know that estimate works for what you want to do. Don't go down and, I mean, if we're talking minimal numbers, I even still like to say no, still would say no. But if you're talking like $100 here or there, like to match a guy on a big job or something, that's different. But don't, like Steve's getting at, you don't need to fight and work for free to get the work. There's plenty of work out there.
No, because now you have just made that customer a bad customer.
Yeah.
You've just trained that customer that if they whine about every job,
they can walk on you.
They can step all over you. Yeah. My old boss, who who has one of the biggest, they've downsized a lot because they're getting ready to retire. But they had one of the biggest companies around here, fleets of trucks and equipment. He once told me if the customer takes a job and they don't whine a little bit before they say, all right, fine, and they don't whine a little bit about the price, you didn't charge enough. Mm-hmm. That's what he told me.
No, and I think I told you a couple months ago, I met the owner of that company when I was first starting, and he said to me, if you go around, you see all these guys with these nice shiny trucks. He's like, a lot of them are just making payments. If you're going and you think you're making money, you're paying all your bills, but if something like, I don't want to use the word catastrophically, but let's say you crash your truck and blow out all the tires, or
he's had stuff like that happen. Yeah. He's had
but where I'm getting at is if you can't afford to pay that, you're not charging enough money. Yeah. Like you don't want to charge just to get by. And we've talked about it. I'm in my first year in business. Like I'd love to make a ton of money, but you need to go into it like the first, year or so, like, I go worst case scenario is probably going to be a break even year. You're building something. Yeah,
you had a plan. Your plan was I know I'm not going to do great my first year because I have to finance myself into business with large ticket items. Mm-hmm. We're not talking about a wheelbarrow here. He's got a $200,000 excavator because he needed it to be in the line of work that he's in. He can't be in that line of work without it. Mm-hmm. And without having massive money at the age of 26, he had to finance himself into it. So his situation's a little different. But, you might be in the same situation, but that comes back to knowing your numbers. Like, he knows his numbers. So what he did was, in preparation to start his business, he moved back home, cut out some stuff out of his life so he could do this. Mm-hmm. So when he goes to bid a job, he now has less stuff in his life to pay for. Yeah. He knows what. No,
and we talk about it all the time. People come up to me, they're like, how are you paying? My excavator payment's $4,100 a month. How are you paying $4,100 a month for an excavator? And I'm like, because it's broken down into my bids and my, the overhead of my bid. Like it's getting paid for. Right. You need to know your numbers. If I didn't think I'd be able to handle it, I wouldn't have done it.
Well, that's like the guy we were talking about who I didn't realize he gave so much good advice, but my old boss, let's call him Bob. Mm-hmm. He'd probably get a kick out of this anyways. But he probably because he didn't think I was listening all these years. But he was crazy successful, and he owns more than one business. Mm-hmm. That is true. Other businesses crazy successful too. Yeah. But he once also told me, it's not what you can afford, it's what you can afford a month. Yeah. He said, remember that. He said, he also told me one time, don't go out and buy something in cash just because you have the money. Yeah. Which I didn't listen. I buy everything in cash. Yeah.
No, there's a benefit to buying things in cash, but there's also a benefit to buying things on credit. Don't sign your whole life away. But
his thing of it is if you And he had his business since 1985.
Mm-hmm.
Large construction. His thing of it is, he told me, if you have the money in the bank, you leave it in the bank.
Mm-hmm.
It's your working capital for in case your transmission explodes
Yeah,
or something.
exactly.
Right?
Liquid cash.
Yeah. And then you go out, you finance the machine. You run into hard times, guess what?
They come back and take it.
They come take the machine.
And a lot of times you run into the time now, it's probably worth more than you paid for it, so you can probably sell it and make money.
Like yours is worth $80,000 more than you purchased.
Bought it for less than a year ago, yeah.
Yeah. So they take it, they have to give you market value, right?
Yeah.
So and then guess what? Like his theory is, you still have all that working capital, you still have your money.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but I mean, me on the other hand, I just pay for the machines.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that because a
and,
lot of it you're making a lot more. You know, you can if we price the job at the exact same, you're putting a lot more money in your back pocket than I would be.
Which comes to the dirty. See, I'm more like, we also do landscape, right? Not just excavation stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm usually fighting with the
generic landscaper,
yeah,
guy who's cutting grass every day and does a couple of larger projects here and there, whatever.
Yeah, and they want to come along and they want to do dirty stuff. Like dirty stuff, I mean, like there was an example of a guy that stole Steve's signs.
Mm-hmm.
My friend Steve stole his signs. Well, he could afford to pay his estimator in his regular car, unmarked car,
mm-hmm.
to drive around and check out all of this guy's customers and then go in and offer them like free mowing and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of his overhead is so low and almost all his stuff is paid for, that he can play dirty against that. Literally, that's like where we live. Yeah, I know it sounds crazy, but it's like, I just think
it's such a small community down here. It's everybody
knows
everything about everybody.
Dirty stuff.
So,
you know, but that's the thing of it is that's always I always wanted to not have overhead to where if somebody messed with me, because I have had people mess with me in the past, other guys,
mm-hmm.
I can mess back with them.
Yeah.
Ever since he told me that like 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of where,
yeah,
you know, not to mention I also lived through 2008 with payments.
Mm-hmm.
So that scares me. So.
Absolutely.
But I would say, getting back to it.
So you formulate the estimate. You know, people are like, how do I price this job? You know, every job's different. So like we said, if, you know, we'll do another Q&A type video. If you guys have a specific job you're looking at and are looking for some insight, we have no problem. But
I think
as far as a like a generic kind of template, it's, you know, costs on materials, costs on your labor, costs on your operator, your equipment being there, trucks being there, factoring that overhead. You know, your numbers. Take the time to think about it.
I think that a lot of younger guys would be shocked to like hear that it's not as crazy as you think. It's literally just finding out what it's going to cost you to do the job
mm-hmm.
first. You know, you may have to, like, wherever you get your stone, you might have to drive over there and ask for an updated price list. And keep in mind those change every year.
Mm-hmm.
And this time it's changing daily. You know.
No, and like I said, give them a call, because you know you might be getting a good bigger quantity. They might cut you a little bit of a deal. It's always good to call. It never hurts to call. Always
tell them what you're looking for tonnage or yardages, because they have different prices for different stuff.
Definitely.
So definitely figure out what it's going to cost you to do the job.
Mm-hmm.
That's your first step in bidding a job, is you have to figure out your cost.
Yeah.
And think of the unexpected.
Yeah.
Like, leave yourself a little
wiggle room.
A wiggle room.
Yeah.
So like, let's say you bought a dump truck, right?
Mm-hmm.
We talk about this all the time.
Yep.
You should be, James like said the other day, you should always be charging
as if you have to go in and hire and pay a guy to do it. And I say the same thing to you. Like, if you're, let's say I own my own pit and I have my own loam, I have my own fill, I have my own stone, you should still be charging or I can dump for free. You should still be charging as if you have to go out and buy it, because you never know what's going to happen. You could be, a material yard could be right across the street, or the guy that, if you don't have your own yard and the guy you've always been dumping at, maybe he's like, no, I got no room. You can't dump here today.
Well,
or
look what happened with the stumps.
Yeah.
I was dumping at a particular place at such and such a price,
mm-hmm.
and it was a good deal. And then I went in there one day, and the girl at the office who I do business with all the time, she says, nope, no more stumps. You can dump brush or whatever, but we're shutting you off from stumps. So then I had to go and pay
a little more.
And
luckily that place was right next to the other place, but a lot of times, you know, you could be traveling miles, and that's time. So,
and the other thing too is luckily I bid the job correctly to where that extra money to dump the stumps didn't hurt me at all.
Yeah.
The other thing too is a long time ago I bid a job for me to do all the trucking, and then my truck broke.
And then you got to hire somebody.
But I had charged enough to where I hired my friend Joey with his 10-wheeler. And it didn't hurt. So,
and then like we talk about, if it gets to the point where everything goes perfect to plan and you're trucking, you dump the stumps for free or the nice price you had, all that extra fluff money you put in is just extra money in your pocket.
It's extra money. You don't need to, I mean, you could, if you felt like it, go back to the customer and, you know, give them a break, but I don't think you should. I think you should stick to your number you gave them. If you make out, you stick it in your bank account, and then you go into it with the fact that this job did okay. The next one's not going to go that way. Don't think every job's going to go that way.
It's a learning experience, and if anybody can tell you that, it's me. You know, every day is something. You know, starting your own company is something new. You know, one thing I value more than anything now, when we talk about it all the time, is time. You know, when you're by yourself, and even if you're going in and you're spreading 3 trucks of loam, if you got to get out of the machine and go get the loam and deliver the loam, like that's costing a lot more time than if you had one guy in the truck and one guy in the machine. And it's same thing for me. I come from a large company where it's, you know, let's say we're putting in a septic system or something. If my guys working are like, oh, hey, we ran out of glue, or we need a pipe fitting, I just hop in the truck and go. But those guys are still working. Now for me, I got to stop from what I'm doing, drive a half hour. So definitely knowing your time is huge, and a huge part of that cost.
The other thing too is,
and unfortunately, you and I both know it, as far as knowing how long things are going to take. It's just experience.
The other thing too is for many years I didn't like paying to have things delivered, because I had something happen to me a long time ago where the person who delivered the materials tried to actually steal the work from me. So if you're having materials delivered, you kind of want to vet the company, and make sure that they don't do the same kind of work as you. I try to use either like a garden center or a quarry, or, you know, if you're doing small landscape stuff, use a large construction company, because they're not interested in little stuff. You know, sometimes just ask other guys, like, who's a good guy that like you use that for like topsoil and fill and stuff that's not going to steal work. Because I've had guys show up to deliver me something and start handing out cards. And trying to cut me out of the picture. Like, hey, we could spread this for you too. Also, that happened to me down off of 6A here. But don't be afraid to hire somebody, because I went many years after that paying all the trucking expense. And then, like James was saying, you know, it takes a lot longer if you don't have a driver, because instead of like pushing, like if I'm filling in a hole, instead of pushing each load into the hole, no, I'm in the truck going to get another one. So once I dump like
the truck's sitting while you're pushing it, where it could be go getting another load. You know, it's the same thing.
You know, and the other thing, once you've been on a job and you do enough of these jobs, make sure you always. Another thing too is make sure you don't do like, I have a friend named Nick, a little landscape guy. He's out of business. No surprise there. But he went out of business just from doing dumb things. Like, he would go to a job and he would do a guesstimate. Don't guess, measure. I measure mulch beds. Okay, measure the thickness, length times width times height, divide by 27
to get your cubic yardage.
Like,
and you know what? You know, if it's a rounded, crazy plant bed, just come out a little bit more.
Make it a square.
You know, it's just gonna be a conservative estimate and get you more money in the long run. You know.
Yeah.
And I always say, like, you know, if it's like, say you're doing 4 inches of mulch or whatever, like try to carry 6 inches or something, just in case. Have a little fluff in there, because, you know, when you're spreading mulch, you and I both know, I don't do it much anymore, but you're not going around with a tape measure and
No,
measuring.
we only do it now if it's part of a project.
Yeah.
But still, it has.
But
to
even same thing with loam. It's like
Yeah.
we want 4 inches of loam. I always try to say 4 to 6 because you and I aren't going around and measuring how much loam's going in.
Yeah, and then it's tough for me because I will say like on my estimates they're like super vague.
Yeah, that's another thing we've talked about is try to not give the customer, outline them a clear scope of work, but try to hold off on your exact, do like a plus or minus, cubic yardage or tonnage. Because if you have a little extra, I mean, we've both had customers come back that are like, oh, you didn't use this 5 extra yards that you said you were going to use, and they're going to try to nickel and dime you. And it's like, it's not that, where that you or I are trying to screw them, but you paid for that extra 5 yards to come to the job.
Yeah.
It's not like you can go and return it and bring it back.
Well, that's like I had this street one time down in Dennis. I did the whole street. So I would at the time had a big 10-wheeler with a high lift gate. So what we would do is we would start at the top of the street, and we would do this house. Then we would roll down the street, do this house when we were doing maintenance. And I remember I got to I don't know, second or third house. And we're like, all right, we're all done. And they're like, well, and they're looking in the truck. They're like, well, what's that? Oh, well, you owe me, that looks like half the truckload. So you owe me half the money back. I'm like, no. That truck holds this many cubic yards. I gave you a price to do your yard. And your yard's done, right? And your yard's done at this many inches, like I discussed. This is for the next house. We're doing multiple jobs here. So then I started telling my guys, we do that. Like when we're done, shut their tailgate, leave it tarped. And then we go to the next one. Because believe it or not, people get these crazy ideas that they
people are looking for a freebie.
They're just always looking for something. So don't give somebody some way to.
Yeah.
The other thing too is if you're doing a job I had a friend who was doing an estimate and he parked in this person's driveway with a leaky truck. And his estimate turned into having to repave the dude's driveway.
Wow.
He never even got the job. So when I go to do estimates, I park in the street. Yeah. Because my diesel pickup leaks a little.
Yeah, I try.
It's crazy stuff like that you have to think about that comes out and just bites you in the ass, and you don't even realize it. You know?
And back to the estimates, I like to call them kind of inclusions, exclusions. You want to make notes at the bottom of your estimate. Stuff that's kind of outside your scope, just so it's outlined and it's seen. For me, an example for me, it's a lot of it is like outside layout, engineering, testing. I want to be able to go and dig a cellar hole and have it all pinned, ready to go. It's going to cost me time to do it myself or, stuff like that, for instance. I think we've talked about it. Obviously you want to dig safe your properties, but definitely put an exclusion in there for any unmarked utilities like irrigation, speaker, little wires, secondary electric type stuff.
The other thing too is the way that we do it is so my wife does the online dig safe tickets, or like some people in the country call it locate, for the they call it different stuff, but here we call it dig safe.
You're basically what we're talking about is utility locating, like gas, water, electric, sewer.
The way that we do it is we will not pull a dig safe ticket until we have a signed contract and a deposit check. Yeah. And I try to get my deposit checks days in advance to make sure they're going to clear. You can't give me a deposit check the day that I show up.
No.
Okay.
I'll tell you what though. One thing I do sometimes is I'll dig safe the property, after I meet the customer before they've agreed, just so you can see where stuff is to help on your estimate. Because if you're digging something over a gas line that you don't know is there, that's going to take a lot more time.
Do you close it out after if you don't get the job?
Yes.
Okay. Because I dig safe the job before getting a deposit or a contract.
And then if somebody else shows up.
And then what happened, it was one of my neighbors on my street. Yeah. And I thought I was being a nice guy and I was being a little lenient on my... That's another thing too. If you set up rules for your company, do not make exceptions and don't break them. You set them up for a reason.
Yeah. And friends are the ones that'll get you.
Yeah. So I did a dig safe ticket,
Mhm.
and then he's like, we're not going to do that job. Then all of a sudden I found out later, this is years ago, I found out later that like I got a call from DigSafe. The guy's name was Mike. I remember he called me. He's like, "Yeah, is this Steve?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Yeah, I'm over here at this thing or whatever, blah blah blah." And he's going on and on. And apparently they were like digging by hand and like hit the thing with a shovel.
Yeah, the homeowner.
Yeah, the homeowner. And then they freaked out and called the gas company. And then I'm like, "Well, I didn't get that job."
Yeah.
But I never went back in and closed it. So now if I don't, so like something happened.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be too worried about it because if it's not your company doing the work, like it's, now on the dig safe tickets, it's, like if you were doing a job for me, if like we were talking about earlier, if your name's not on that ticket, even though it's under me, like I'm gonna get
Right, but
trouble.
this was my thing.
But what I'm saying is
And
like
he was
like the homeowner, like you said, I could see would be a problem. But if another company came in and hit it, like it would never be.
no.
It would never be
What
your
I'm
problem.
saying is like we didn't get the job, and then like 2 weeks later, the homeowners
They were trying to
out
do
there
it themselves
digging and hit the gas line.
And your name's the one that's
And
on
my
file.
name's on, and I'm getting a phone call for a hit gas line
Yeah.
on my license because in Massachusetts we have to have an equipment operator's license. I know some states don't.
Yeah.
But like you have so many hits on that, and they take it away from you.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm getting a phone call. I'm like, no, we didn't get that job.
Yeah.
And the dude's like, well, and that's when I learned. This was years ago. That's a few years ago. That's when I learned that like if you don't get the job or whatever, or something happens, like
Close it out.
you need to close it out.
Yep.
So that's what we do now. Like, so now my thing of it is like we meet with the person, they, and we give them a price or whatever, and everything works out. We get a deposit from them days in advance. Then I will come tell her, okay, that job's a go, and
do the ticket.
I'll give her the address and everything. And now they require you to like paint it out.
Yep.
So like then you have
pre-mark it.
Yeah, so like you have to go back and pre-mark in white paint or put a cone out or something. And so that's how we do it. But I guess to sum it up here, because we're probably gonna close this one down here. That's the process.
The process that we go through.
Yeah,
I mean.
go meet with somebody. Listen to what they want to do. And then whatever it is, you may have to give them suggestions, or you may have to tell them, I'm sorry, I can't do that for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
Or, hey, here's a better idea. Why don't we do this after you've listened to them? Then figure out what the job's going to cost you.
Yep.
And then after that, get a deposit from them, and then set up a time and,
outline a contract with your payment terms, and should be ready to go. And like we said, I think we plan on doing another video. If you guys have any specific questions, estimating related or not, I think we'll do some type of Q&A based.
Drop us a comment in the box below, or
you guys can reach out to me on Instagram, Ruberti Construction. My name's on the board there, RUBERTI. Be happy to answer anything. I think Steve's probably the same way.
Yeah. All right. Hope that helps somebody. And we'll catch you on the next one.